Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into the fascinating stories of Moses and Sargon the Great. There have been claims that the story of Moses might have been influenced or embellished by the tale of Sargon. But does that mean the overall story of Moses isn't true? Well, let's explore it together. Before we delve into the details, let's understand the key aspects of these two captivating narratives. We'll start with Sargon the Great. Sargon the Great, the legendary ruler of the Akkadian Empire, had a remarkable birth story. According to the Sargon legend, his mother Enheduanna, a high priestess, conceived him through an undisclosed relationship. Fearing the shame and repercussions, Enheduanna placed baby Sargon in a reed basket and set him adrift on the mighty Euphrates River. Fate intervened when a kind gardener named Aki discovered the baby and decided to raise him as his own son. Sargon would then grow up in the household of the king, to later overthrow him and start an empire. Let's shift our focus to Moses, the central figure in the biblical narrative. Moses was born during a time when the Hebrews were enslaved in Egypt. To protect him from Pharaoh's cruel decree to kill all Hebrew baby boys, his mother Jochebed placed him in a basket and set him adrift on the majestic Nile River. Miraculously, the basket caught the attention of Pharaoh's daughter, who, filled with compassion, decided to adopt the baby as her own. The similarities between the stories of Sargon and Moses are striking, particularly regarding their birth and abandonment. Some have argued that the biblical account of Moses drew inspiration from the Sargon legend. However, it's important to note that these similarities should not discount the overall authenticity and significance of Moses' story. While the birth narratives share common elements, the contexts and historical evidence surrounding Moses and Sargon differ. But don't just take my word for it. Let's hear from renowned scholar Irving Finkel, who has extensively studied these stories.
There are undoubtedly things that were taken into the text of the Bible, especially at the beginning of the book, because in my view, the tradition of the Judeans that they had already it didn't cover creation properly. It didn't cover lots of things, and so they pinched ideas because they could read them, as I explained before. So, for example, the bit about Moses and the bulrushes and that boat is a retelling of a story which applied to an old king of Mesopotamia, exactly the same thing.
Sargon, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And they pinched the story to apply to Moses in order to attack the Egyptians and make fun of them. So it's all I mean, the real thing about that story is that the Egyptian princess, sees this thing in the river with the baby in it, and they rescue it, and she takes it back to the palace, and they have a problem because they can't feed the baby, because ancient Egyptian women, as you know from wall paintings, didn't have any breasts. They're all made of cardboard and they're all going like this. So there probably wasn't a mammary gland among them. So what happened is they had to get one of the Judean women to suckle this child to keep it alive. And they employed the mother, and they didn't know. And what idiots they were. And that's a huge joke. They must have roared with laughter at the stupid Egyptians. They paid the mother to suckle her own baby. I mean, that's what that text is really about. It's the story, which is a hoary old story from Mesopotamia about an ancient king. And of course, Moses has to have a famous start. So they pinch the marvelous thing about the basket. And at the same time, they attack the Egyptians and they make a joke out of it. And, you know,
kill two birds with one stone.
Precisely so. Precisely so.
The earliest written attestations of the Moses story come from the biblical texts found in the Hebrew Bible or Old Testament. Scholars debate the exact dating of these texts, but they are generally believed to have been written between the 13th and 5th centuries BCE. The oldest surviving copies, such as the Dead Sea Scrolls, date back to the 3rd century BCE to the 1st century CE. On the other hand, the Sargon legend itself is thought to have been composed during the reign of Sargon's grandson, Naram-Sin, around the 22nd century BCE. However, the surviving tablets and fragments that contain the legend are from later periods, primarily from the 7th century BCE and onward. It's important to note that the dating of these ancient texts and artifacts relies on various methods, including linguistic analysis, paleography, and contextual clues. While the earliest evidence for the Moses story is closer to the events it describes, the surviving copies of the Sargon legend are separated by a considerable time span from the alleged reign of Sargon the Great. So, what does all this mean for the overall truth of the Moses story? While the parallels between Sargon and Moses may raise questions, it's essential to interpret these narratives within their respective historical and cultural contexts. The biblical account of Moses holds immense theological and spiritual significance for millions of people. The focus should not solely be on the specific details, but rather on the broader themes of liberation, faith, and the divine intervention attributed to Moses' life. It's crucial to recognize that these comparative discussions primarily affect fundamental views of the creation of the Old Testament rather than challenging one's personal faith. As well as only the birth narrative is taken from the Sargon story, it was likely just taken because of the fame of the motif of Sargon, and as Dr. Finkel said, to mock the Egyptians. So it's important not to extrapolate farther than the evidence allows. The spiritual lessons and profound impact of the Moses story remain powerful and meaningful, regardless of historical details. So, as we consider the possible influences and similarities between the stories of Sargon and Moses, let's remember that the truth and power of these narratives lie beyond historical exactitude. They speak to the human experience, inspire faith, and offer profound lessons that continue to resonate with believers today. And that concludes our exploration of the connections between the stories of Moses and Sargon the Great. Remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember, your faith can thrive even amidst historical inquiries. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.